When you think about the great American achievements of the 19th century, the Transcontinental Railroad is always right up there. It was this massive feat of engineering, something that stitched a whole nation together. But there's a huge part of that story, a human story of unbelievable sacrifice that was basically buried for over 100 years. So today, let's uncover the story of those forgotten builders.
Right, so the story we usually get is all about American ingenuity, this great triumph. But what's so powerful here is that it shows this other story running right alongside it but totally hidden. It's a story of immigrant sacrifice, and it's all about the thousands of Chinese laborers whose hands actually laid the tracks, but whose names were just lost to history.
So in this explainer, we're going to dig into that hidden story. We'll start with who these forgotten builders were. Then look at the perilous promise that brought them here in the first place. We'll see how they survived against all odds, understand the ultimate price so many of them paid, and finally look at the incredible legacy they forged in iron.
Okay, let's dive right in with the builders themselves. This is a story of struggle, yeah, but also one of incredible sacrifice and survival.
So the first question is, why? Why did they come? What was this perilous promise that could convince thousands of men to travel halfway across the globe for a job this dangerous?
You have to picture it, right? It's the mid-1800s, and parts of China are just reeling from conflict and poverty. America, with its promise of jobs, of gold, it seems like this beacon of hope. These guys weren't just adventurers. They were sons, husbands, fathers, trying to earn money to send back home. Most arrived with almost nothing. Didn't know the language, didn't know the culture, but what they did have was just this incredible determination.
But that promise, it went sour, and it went sour fast. This is where the dream just slams into reality. That idea of earning good money for their families, it crashed against the fact that they were paid way less than white workers for the exact same back-breaking job. A chance for a new life was met with constant prejudice and violence. And the great adventure? Well, in reality, it was a daily dance with death.
So given all that, the question is, how on earth did they survive? This part of the story is all about sheer endurance, both on the job and off. The physical work was just staggering. They were given the most dangerous, most treacherous sections of the railroad, carving tunnels through solid granite in the Sierra Nevada mountains, laying track across blistering hot deserts. They were using picks, shovels, and incredibly unstable explosives, all while dealing with scorching heat and freezing cold for hours and hours on end.
And yet, as terrifying as the dynamite and the dizzying heights were, the most constant, most persistent threat they faced, it actually came from the people around them.
So on top of all that physical danger, they had to deal with this crushing social hardship. As you can see here, they were systematically paid less, they were punished way more harshly for tiny mistakes, and they had to endure violence with basically no legal protection. They were literally building a nation that, at the time, refused to see them as equals or give them even the most basic rights.
But here's the incredible part. In the face of all this hostility, all this hardship, they didn't just break. They built something for themselves. They found their strength not in being alone, but in being together.
Life off the line was tough. They lived in these cramped, makeshift camps, often with really poor sanitation. But inside those camps, they created these powerful communities. They held on to their traditions from back home, sharing food, celebrating festivals. They looked out for each other because no one else would. Their shared culture became their lifeline, a source of comfort and incredible resilience.
But that resilience was tested every single day because the work remained lethally dangerous. So let's turn to the immense human cost of all this progress.
The dangers were just relentless. You had unpredictable dynamite explosions that could go off at any moment. The very mountains they were chipping away at could turn on them with massive landslides or falling rocks. And then in the winter, in the mountains, you had the terrifying silent threat of deadly avalanches.
The exact number, it's been lost to history, and that's part of the tragedy. But it's estimated that thousands of Chinese workers died building that railroad. So many were just buried in unmarked graves right alongside the tracks they'd laid, their names and their stories completely erased.
And this, for me, this is the most heartbreaking part of it all. For every single man who died out there on the line, there was a family back in China just waiting for a letter that was never going to arrive, wondering forever what happened to their son, their husband, their father.
And yet, through all that suffering, they finished the job. They left behind this legacy forged in iron, a legacy that completely transformed America, even as their role in it was being actively forgotten.
And let's be really clear about this. Their labor wasn't just helpful, it was absolutely essential. The Transcontinental Railroad connected the coasts. It fueled westward expansion. It laid the groundwork for the modern American economy. The growth of the nation was built, literally, on their backs and on their sacrifice.
But just look at this timeline. It shows you how painfully long the road to recognition has been. The railroad's done in 1869, and what's their reward? Just over a decade later, you get the Chinese Exclusion Act, which bans further immigration. It wasn't really until the late 20th century that historians started to piece their story together, with widespread acknowledgement only coming around the 150th anniversary in 2019.
And that's really the core of this whole story, isn't it? Their incredible, dangerous, hard work literally shaped the physical and economic map of the United States. And yet, their sacrifice, their contribution, was just systematically overlooked for generations.
So in the end, you're left with two stories that are completely intertwined. You can't have one without the other. You've got the railroad story, a story of industry, steel, and innovation. And then you have the worker's story, a human story of unbelievable courage, community, and survival against all odds.
Remembering their legacy is so important. It's an act of setting the historical record straight. And it leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. As we look back at our own history, whose stories have we yet to tell?